Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Reed, host of My Boomer Buddies podcast, where we tell it like it was and is. I want to introduce you to one of our best guests ever, Mr. John Hayes. John, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Rick. I am absolutely thrilled to be here.
And you also chose the topic today, and as always, you're super prepared. What do you want to touch on first?
All right, today, and thank you so much. I really enjoy the freedom you give me, and you have yet to turn down any of my topics, so I appreciate that. Thank you. But today I chose the TV show Bonanza.
Bonanza is one of the great all-time westerns, if not the greatest. You can throw in Rifleman, which we have done an episode on that before. Gunsmoke, we need to do an episode. I'm excited. Bonanza went through a lot of seasons and all that, but I'm going to let you dive into that. I'll jump in. Hopefully I can catch up with you.
All right, fair enough. Bonanza aired on NBC for 14 television seasons from 1959 through 1973. In 1961, rose to number 2 in the Nielsen ratings and then stayed in the top 5 for 9 consecutive television seasons, making this show one of the most successful shows of the 1960s.
Yeah, and like we touched on briefly, there was a lot of competition out there. They're all beloved as we look back right now, beloved shows. What is it that made that such a good show and make it stick out so well?
Well, I hope. I like to think it's the characters, the writing, the themes they went into, and the talent. So hopefully we unravel some of that today for the benefit of our audience.
Who are the stars of the show? I think I remember them all.
Yeah. The stars, I will categorize them as the main cast. But the main cast included Lorne Greene, who played the role of Ben Cartwright, and Ben was the patriarch of the family. Actor Pernell Roberts played the role of Adam Cartwright, and Adam is one of Ben's sons. Adam stayed with the show until his departure after season number 6. The next oldest son was played by actor Dan Blocker, and his character was Eric Hoss Cartwright. And tragically, Dan Blocker passed away in 1962 at the young age of 43. He passed away suddenly, and a lot of fans will point to that as maybe one of the reasons that eventually led to Bonanza's cancellation. He was so beloved as a character that the show just wasn't the same without him.
Haas, Dan Blocker in real life had gallbladder surgery, and he got a blockage after surgery. But I know that season should have stopped right there. I mean, that was not my favorite thing to watch after Haas died. I remember Pernell Roberts. I thought his character, I was too young to really understand too much because he was such a thinking guy, caring guy. And I remember the first few seasons, maybe it was the first one, maybe 2, he wore a gray hat. And then after that, he wore a black hat. And so when you're a little kid, you think black hat, bad guy. But he just was very sophisticated in his thinking. In real life, he left the show just because he thought the writing was beneath his abilities. And I'm curious to the viewers out there, John, what they thought of Adam, the character Adam, and the actor, Pernell Roberts, what you thought. He was on other shows after that, right?
Yes.
He was a character from the original MASH called
Trapper John, M.D.
Yeah, and I never really watched that show. I didn't see the correlation at all, to be honest. But, I'm not going to sit here. Pernell Roberts was a really fine actor, and he had a place in Bonanza, like you said, the first 6 years, and then went on his way. Tell me about some of the other characters on there.
Yes, then the youngest brother was played by actor Michael Landon, and his character was Joseph, or Little Joe Cartwright. The next actor in the main cast was actor David Canary, and he played the role of Candy Canaday. And he was on the show for seasons 9, 10, and the final season of 14. We also had Mitch Vogel, who played the role of Jamie Hunter Cartwright, Ben's adopted son. And he was on the show for seasons 12 through 14. And of course, after Bonanza, he enjoyed a rather successful appearance in the 1978 TV show Wonder Woman with Linda Carter.
Linda Carter, you got it in. Another episode where John Hayes got his forever crush, Linda Carter on there, and the contract is now fulfilled. Somebody else that was on the later episodes was somebody named Tim Matheson. I know that.
Yes, Tim Matheson, great point. Tim Matheson played the character of Griff King, and his only appearance was for season 14. Of course, after Bonanza, a few years later, Tim Matheson had a role in one of the best movies to come out of Hollywood. Of course, I'm talking about the movie Animal House.
Classic. He was amazing. We all tried to emulate him, and I don't know why, but we did. And you probably have this in your tidbits coming up, but there's only 2 cast members left over alive from that series. So I'll leave that for later.
Okay, great.
The regulars were there. You also had other regulars, like one of them is a character actor who played the sheriff of the town. Do you have information on that one?
Yes, that was played by the actor uh, Ray Teal, and he played Sheriff Roy Coffey. And for my research, he was technically listed in a recurring role, not part of the main cast. I don't know. I wasn't going to split hairs, and it was just a way to divide the characters up. But he appeared in 99 episodes throughout the seasons of Bonanza. And I enjoyed his character. He seemed like, for a sheriff, he seemed common sense, fair to both sides. Yeah, he seemed like a good dude.
One of my favorites, John, Hop Sing.
Hop Sing is the man. And I want to now put a little message out there for Mrs. Hayes. Yes, we're going to talk about Hop Sing. He was one of her favorite characters. But that was played by Victor Sen Young. And for the time, I enjoyed the interaction with the Cartwrights and Hop Sing. They seemed to have a good working relationship. And he was the man. I enjoyed his character.
Now, today, Bonanza was on. I was down here prepping. Listeners, subscribers, I do prepare somewhat. Not as well as John Hayes, but I was upstairs and Bonanza was on. And it was the scene he was in a stable. He just came in from out of town and he went to the livery stable to get a horse. And there was a bad guy in there who cut off his ponytail. And, to their culture, that's terrible. And unfortunately, I don't remember how that ended. I meant to go back and look. They dealt with some real issues on that show over the years, and I know Adam wanted it to be that way. Pernell Roberts wanted it to be the scripts more like that. So the earlier ones were pretty good about that. Anyway, Hop Sing was one of my favorite characters.
Awesome you brought up that episode. And we did not rehearse this prior to the show, but that is one of my top 3 favorite episodes. The episode you started, I can tell you how it ends, but it's an awesome episode. I recommend you watch the entire thing because I really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, wonderful things happen when you record a show. Any other regulars? Wasn't Kurt Russell's dad, Brick Russell? He was on there. Several parts on there. He ended up being a lawman on there as well. If you're not familiar with that, you can check that out. But hey, listeners, viewers, go ahead. Let us know. Give us comments. Some of your memories from the show. We'd love to hear that. Just very easy. Comment below here. I'll relay that information to John, and he'll love to hear that as well. So,
Absolutely. And we'll talk more about some of our favorite guest stars. And from my quick browsing of my sources, there were over 800 different actors who received credit for appearing on Bonanza. So that's a large list. There's a lot of different ways you can slice and dice that and pick out your favorites. We'll talk more about that later in the show.
And now, John, that we're older, I see it on MeTV. The color is so vivid. They put it in color even when a lot of America did not have color TVs. But it's like a film, like watching a movie. And it was so well produced. The network really did a nice job on that series, Bonanza.
I agree. And I found I especially geeked out about the color, and specifically that color of green in Michael Landon's Little Joe's jacket. That's a different, that's a really unique color green. I really like that as part of and he wears the same jacket almost every show. So you get a chance to see it quite often, but they really, it's a unique color green. I really geeked out about it.
It looks like hush puppy green, the suede. And you're right. I looked for stuff like that. Do you know the name of Little Joe's horse, that Pinto?
I don't. That's awesome trivia. Do you?
I ran across it. It's Cochise. And at first it was called Tomahawk. And yeah, but they settled on Cochise, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, John, is there any more cast information you want to talk about?
Not at this point. We'll cover some of the more obscure or some of our favorite guest stars a little bit later in the show.
All right. Everybody knows the opening show theme for sure to play. And you want to hear that now? And you want to set that up?
Well, I will say number one, I'm going to go on a limb and say that instrumental version of the show opening, that is very recognizable, I think, across the baby boomer demographic. We hear that, we know what TV show that is from. You may not know, but there was a vocal version of the theme song, and that was released in 1963 by Johnny Cash. And you would think, man, the height of Bonanza's popularity, Johnny Cash releases a vocal version of the theme song. It didn't resonate with the public so well. That song rose to number 94 in the pop music top 100, so it didn't take off so well.
John, we got to hear that. Is this Johnny Cash or somebody else?
But this is the one I provided for you?
Yeah.
The one I provided was the pilot episode. They decided to do a vocal version of the theme song. And Rick, you're more of a music guy than I am, but I'm not totally certain you can call this singing. In addition to that, I have a trivia question for you. There's a young woman who's going to make an appearance in this video, and I'd like you to pay attention to her, because she's a famous name you may have heard of. So here is the Bonanza theme song from the pilot, 1959.
Pilot episode.
I've got a flair for women everywhere. Bonanza! Bonanza! Aye, aye, aye! And when I call on Diddy Gal at all, she's gonna welcome
Too much
me.
noise. Can't sleep.
I'm not afraid of any pretty maid. Bonanza! Bonanza! When I give a kiss to any pretty miss, she'll learn a lot from me. 1 for 4, 4 for 1. This we guarantee. We got a right to pick a little fight. Bonanza! Bonanza! If anyone fights any one of us, he's got to fight with me.
You're right, the singing wasn't that great, was it? But I tell you what, though, that was the very beautiful Yvonne DiCarlo.
Nice, nicely done. Yes, when she's not all dressed up in the Bride of Frankenstein Munster's makeup.
Lily Munster, there she is, yeah. Yeah, she had a storied career in movies and moved into television, of course, that appearance there. That was the first episode ever of Bonanza. I know that episode. I have seen it recently. She is beautiful. And the singing, not so much, but thanks for sharing that. That's a clip I had never seen before.
Yes, and I don't know whose decision that was to use the instrumental version of the song rather than that shouting, yelling thing we just saw, but the instrumental works much better, in my opinion.
It was a good decision to kind of lose that for a while. Now we appreciate it, don't we? I'm very happy that you shared that.
How about if we cover the backstory? I think this could be interesting for the viewers who may not be as familiar with Bonanza as we are.
I think that's a great idea, John.
The TV show chronicles the weekly adventure of the Cartwright family, headed by the thrice widowed Ben Cartwright. I'll stop right there. All right, so this guy, he's been married and widowed 3 times. Each of his wives had a baby and either died in childbirth or shortly after. Now, I'm not a 19th century dating expert, but I would think after a while, Ben would have trouble getting a second date. You know, once he has a history like that. What do you think?
Well, he's charming. He's got a commanding presence. He's got money.
Does he ever? We'll talk about that coming up here. But yeah, you know, so I read that and I thought, he's been widowed. He's the most unluckiest guy ever? Or should we maybe assign a Pinkerton detective to this case and see if they can figure out how these women keep on expiring after they give birth to his kids?
Little Joe, his mom must have been pretty demure, you know, smaller. Boss? Yeah, she must have been a big woman. And I don't mean looks-wise, just frame-wise. She must have been pretty
athletic.
big. The genetics there are pretty big. And of course, Adam, the first son, thus Adam, I'm guessing, his mother had another type. And he was always looking. Ben was always looking. Seemed like every other episode, one of the boys or the dad were getting married or in a romance.
Absolutely. And the boys themselves, so we touched on it earlier, but Adam was more of the intelligent intellect. He had an advanced degree. He designed the ranch house that we see in the show. So he was an architect. He's more the level-headed, kind of the calm, quiet firstborn. I mean, he's part of our club, Rick. He's the firstborn, so he's kind of level-headed, leader type of thing. I would say then Hoss. What do you think? Hoss, the gentle giant,
Exactly.
caring, lovable, and sometimes a bit of a naive nature, and that naive nature would sometimes get him into different predicaments. And we mentioned him earlier, but what about Little Joe? Little Joe was, I think he's emotionally complex, impulsive, liked to flirt with the ladies. If they were single or if they were taken by another fella, so Little Joe got in his own type of predicaments based on his personality.
Absolutely. He was somebody that was quick to temper. And being a little guy, I don't know if you should be fighting everybody you run into. He's a lover and a fighter. I'd say that's fair to say about him. He had a pretty good character. I know that in real life, Pernell Roberts didn't really like the scripts. He didn't like the way that Little Joe acted or the way they wrote for him. And that's too bad that there were some differences there. That's pretty much why he left the show, being that classically trained actor. And like I said earlier, his character I didn't fully understand. But now, John, when I watched Bonanza, I appreciate Adam a lot more. I'll say that.
There we go. There we go. And I think it's fair we should mention the Ponderosa itself. So the family lived on the Ponderosa. The Ponderosa is the name of the ranch. Now this ranch is 1,000 square miles. Or in other words, that is 640,000 acres on the shore of Lake Tahoe in Nevada, opposite of California and the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, 3,000 acres, that's a large chunk of land. And what I thought was interesting about the show is that the Cartwrights, they'd ride into the next community, a neighboring town, and they said, well, we're the Cartwrights. We live on the Ponderosa. And they'd say, well, we never heard of you. Never heard of these people? I mean, my dad and my dad can name, I think, every farmer in town that has an acreage larger than 400 acres. And these guys never heard of the people that own 640,000 acres? I thought that was interesting.
And if you look at that map, my goodness, look at the Ponderosa land. That's incredible. And you had Carson City and Virginia City close by, and Reno, not too much further. They owned a lot of land.
Absolutely. And this is the map you see at the start of the show. And as a geek, I spent many years as a geeky child. What kind of bugged me about this is check up in the upper left-hand corner. See the north? North kind of points off in like a weird direction. I'm sorry, north should be up.
All right, John, this is the real north-south of that map, isn't it?
Much better, much better. And I enjoy on the show, so you can see this is a very large piece of property. And I'm going to speculate. I've never owned a horse or know how far a horse can travel in a day, but I'm going to say to get from the north side of the Ponderosa to that south side, that's going to take you a good 4-day ride by horse.
Can I confess something to you, John? All the years of watching Bonanza, I thought it laid sideways. That was north and south. Lake Tahoe here. That's a lot of land.
From what my research uncovered was Ben Cartwright made some very strategic investments, and he was part of there was a lot of mining in that area, a lot of mining for gold and silver during that time, and Ben provided the lumber for those mines. And kind of supply and demand thing, he had a lot of lumber, invested wisely, purchased more land, and yeah, was able to grow his ranch to a substantial size there.
And access to water, looks like to me.
I mean, can you imagine lakefront property on Lake Tahoe today probably goes for a pretty penny.
Oh, man. That's an interesting thing that you pulled up for us to look at. It opens my eyes even wider to more about that show all these years later. That's crazy.
Rick, I would like to next talk about some of the guest stars. And my amateur research, I uncovered more than 800 people appeared on Bonanza.
That's great. Let's go.
That's a big number. And I'm going to say I enjoyed looking through that list, and I'll term this as I saw on that list a lot of the usual cowboys you would see in some of the cowboy shows we've watched and we've covered on this podcast. But we saw guest stars such as Denver Pyle, my man, Dabbs Greer, was on Bonanza, Strother Martin, Claude Akins, Slim Pickens, and one of my favorites, Jack Elam, who Jack Elam got ripped off. He should have won the Oscar for Nun's Cannonball Run, but that's a different topic. But how about you? Did you have some of the favorite guest stars from reading the different lists that you encountered in your research?
I remember the ladies primarily, especially with good TVs now, and the prints on the Bonanza that they are broadcasting on MeTV are really rich and they're vibrant, and it makes them look just fantastic, like movie stars, which some of them were. I'll read off a few here just to see if you remember, John, and viewers and listeners out there, some of these wonderful leading ladies out here, or guest stars, I should say. Mariette Hartley was one of my favorites in TV in general. She was on different shows, but she appeared 4 times in 4 episodes of Bonanza from 1965 through 1971. Just a beautiful red head. She didn't have to have makeup on or much to look beautiful and plain, which the Westerns called for oftentimes, or she could get all dolled up in a dress back in the Westerns and look absolutely stunning as well. Susan Oliver, she did some Star Trek episodes and other shows like that back in the day. She was in season 2, The Outcast, in 1960, and she was just stunning. Whitney Blake, she was very beautiful, and she played the mother in Hazel, TV show Hazel later on, and Whitney Blake was the mother of Meredith Baxter. She was married to David Burney. And of course, Yvonne DiCarlo, we talked about her in the first episode ever of Bonanza, season 1, episode 1, A Rose for Lotta, and that was in 1959. I love that show, that episode. Zsa Zsa Gabor, she was in an episode. Tina Louise, she was in an episode back in 1967. Desperate Passage. And Zsa Zsa was in Maestro Haas in the same year. Bella Stevens, Silent Thunder, season 2, 1960. Inger Stevens, she was in a lot of people's favorite episodes, The Newcomers. Stephanie Powers of Heart to Heart and other shows. She was in season 5. 1963, she was in an episode. I can't read my own handwriting, so I'll just admit that now. Patricia Medina, season 1, The Spanish Great. That was in 1960. So really added to the flavor of the show. All great actresses, I'll say that. So that's who I'm going to mention for some of the guest stars on the show.
Yes, and along with Tina Louise, Dawn Wells from Gilligan's Island also appeared. I enjoyed Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa Gabor was on my list also. Just unique. She was on 1 episode and played a prominent role in that episode if you had a chance to see that. I found out that the 1970s comic Foster Brooks, he was in 2 episodes, and in each episode he played a judge. So he must have adopted that drunk guy persona maybe a little later in the 70s. And I found great interest in finding that Doc Severinsen,
What?
the leader of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show band, he appeared in 1 episode as a hotel manager. So Doc Severinsen, cool. One of the Bonanza alumni, appeared on the show.
Well, Foster Brooks, I'm glad you pointed him out because he had the stately gray hair and the look. He looked like a statesman, like a judge. And boy, did he parlay that into a great comedic career.
Yeah, he was on Mike Douglas, Rich Little, Johnny Carson. He made the rounds.
That is so cool. And I know there are hundreds of roles out there for people. And anytime you look at an episode, you'll see the normal cast of character actors that go around to all the other Westerns, Rifleman to name one, or they go to other 50s shows like Perry Mason, 50s, 60s shows. That was their heyday of making a living, a lot of them. And it was so fun now as a senior citizen to look at those people and how they made their livings and on what shows. Fun.
Hey, let's cover some of the episodes that were either the fan favorites or our personal favorites.
Oh, yeah, I like that idea.
I've got 3 that made the mark for this podcast. One of my favorites, and I watched these in my research, Season 10, Episode 13, Mark of Guilt. And that's the episode you mentioned. That's the name of the episode you mentioned. That episode features Hop Singh in a rather prominent role. And without giving too much away, I enjoyed Hop Singh's role in that and watch it from start to finish because it is a great episode. I just love the way he was featured, his contribution to it. It was a cool episode to watch.
Glad you mentioned that. I'm glad I mentioned it too by accident, but that really upset me. The little I saw, and I thought it was very brave and very good that they tackled that subject. I didn't know, like you said, I don't know how it ended up. I will watch. That was one that I would include, definitely.
Yes. Thank you. Another one on my list was from season 5, episode 12. The title of the episode is Hoss and the Leprechauns. And I watched it with no preconceived notion, and I'm watching it for a while, and I'm thinking, come on, they can't be serious with this. What are they doing? But hang in there, watch the episode to the very end, because at the very end, there's an awesome message. That episode really struck home with me. It's like, well, that's a really cool episode. So give it a chance. So if you start watching, you think it's dumb, hang in there. It'll make it worth it at the end.
It's really, really a good episode. I thought the same thing when I saw it recently, and I thought, this is just clown stuff. But they needed to put humor in there too, just to change it up for the audience. They also have very serious episodes with shooting and all that, and they masterfully made that work. And who's the better foil than Hoss Cartwright? Right? Wonderful, wonderful episode. I too will include that as one of my favorites. And the Hop Sing one will end up being a favorite as well. I'll throw one out at you.
Yes.
And I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's the first one. The pilot with Yvonne DiCarlo. Just the premise of the show is the Cartwrights had all the lumber, right? And they didn't like to cut much down. They like to hang on to that. And there's some bad guys that wanted some wood, and their method of trying to get wood out of the Cartwrights, rather than negotiate because they didn't really want to, they hired Lotta to come down and seduce one of the Cartwrights. Well, the one that took the bait was Little Joe, little age difference there and everything, but to try to get some rights from the wood or negotiate a deal, or they would get rid of one of the Cartwrights. And it was a pretty good episode. They started off really hot for their first episode, and really enjoyed it. So go ahead and check that one out. And that was the pilot episode, the first episode of Bonanza. Critics liked it. They thought that was a good way to start.
Fantastic. And the third on my list, from season 10, episode 23, this episode was titled The Wish. And to start the episode, Hoss takes 2 months off. He gets to have a little bit of vacation from the Ponderosa, and he ends up helping a black family. And it's a really cool episode to watch because it just gives you an idea of what's happening in America in the 60s. And it's an example of Bonanza tackling the 1960s social issues, including racism. So I watched that, I thought, wow, this was progressive for the 1960s. And I applaud the writers and everyone involved to make this episode happen. It was a really cool episode to watch.
Yeah, that was a good one. I have the honor of Cochise as one of my favorites as well. Season 3, episode 1. Cochise and his band were coming up from New Mexico. They were coming that far to get someone who they believed was in the army, poisoned some of his tribe members. And the star in that, the cavalry officer, was DeForest Kelley from Star Trek. And that was a pretty good episode. And Adam had gotten shot, and they were trying to save his life and trying to come to a deal. There's just a lot of stuff going on in that one, and it's rather involved. So check that one out. Again, Bonanza. So many great episodes, and it's kind of like Trevor and me doing the Mount Rushmore music episodes. There's no right or wrong answer for the best episodes. It's what you like. It's subjective, and that's kind of what we just did. Great job of picking some out there, John.
I've got a few fun facts that might be fun to throw out there for the benefit of entertainment and education of the fans. And as we mentioned before, this was one of the first TV shows to be broadcast entirely in color. So you will not find Bonanza in black and white. This is the first one where episode 1 through the final episode is shot in color. I read, and again, we have to take into account the source, but I read Michael Landon wore 4-inch lifts in his shoes to make himself taller. But to kind of balance that out, he was the only original cast member not to wear some sort of a toupee.
Correct.
So he got it kind of balanced out there.
He had good hair.
Yes, he had great hair. I have hair envy looking at the guy. Now, when Bonanza was released on DVD, it allowed the fans to collect a certain amount of data, the benefit of watching from the pilot all the way to the end. And fans determined that over the course of 14 seasons, Little Joe was shot 18 times. So, and you'd think if you're messing around with another guy's girl and you get shot for it, you would like remember and don't do that again. Learn from your lesson. But no, Little Joe kept on getting shot. And a credit to the town doctor, he made a full and complete recovery by the next episode. So for a guy that got shot 18 times, he did okay. And I like to think, this is my own amateur opinion, but I think that when the writers ran out of ideas for shows, they said, well, how about a show where Little Joe goes to a neighboring community, flirts with another man's woman, and then his brothers have to bail him out? I think that is 25% of the Bonanza episodes right there.
Yeah, that's a go-to. He gets sucked into it knowingly or unknowingly, but it happens with Little Joe. Yeah, definitely.
And in 1963, Dan Blocker started a chain of restaurants named Bonanza. That chain eventually grew to approximately 600 restaurants by 1989, and I believe I ate at a Bonanza restaurant in Rochester, Minnesota in the late 80s. So my son had a lot of surgeries at the Mayo Clinic, and I was in Rochester quite a bit. But I think I actually ate at one of those restaurants, especially you folks from Rochester. If there was a Bonanza restaurant in Rochester, please indicate so. But I think I ate at a Bonanza restaurant, and it was good food. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, go ahead and comment. Give us some information back. We'd love to read it and share it down the road a little bit. And any other show ideas, like, comment, share, subscribe.
And I also found in the tidbits I uncovered, Robert Blake was considered for the role of Little Joe, and they decided to go with Michael Landon instead. So imagine that show would have looked and felt different with Robert Blake as Little Joe instead of Michael Landon. But I thought that was interesting.
You did another fantastic job of researching this show, and I just skied behind you. Had a blast. What I want to do now is we're going to leave the audience out here to the legacy of Bonanza, because it's still talked about.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And I think Bonanza broke a lot of television boundaries by using its Western theme to settle and address many of the social issues of the 1960s, including racism, anti-Semitism, domestic violence, looking out for the underprivileged, whatever. And it was, I think now compared to when I first watched the show as a child, I really appreciated my research and watching those different episodes. And I'm going to dive in and watch a few more before I see you again.
Me too, and I have a new respect for the very early episodes. I was 2 years old when it came out, and obviously when I was cognizant enough to watch it, I didn't fully understand it. But yeah, I'm going to go watch again too. It's on Me TV now, so it'll be part of my routine where I can do it. John, thanks again for planning this out, and I look forward to many more episodes with you on other topics as well.
Thank you, Rick. I thoroughly enjoyed the research, and this is a fun show to do. So thank you again for the show, your vision, and being an awesome host.
For John Hayes and his pal Linda Carter, I'm Rick Reed of My Boomer Buddies podcast. Until next time, we'll see you
Around the block.